Lighting gels can be used for color balancing when mixing flash or with other types of light. But gels can also be used for creative color effects, and in this episode I'm going to demonstrate how to color your background with a gelled flash and light your subject separately without spoiling the background color effect. Here's what I'm using for this demonstration. A main light for my subject, which is a shoe mount flash on a light stand with a softbox modifier. A light for the background, I'll be using an identical flash unit without a modifier. A gray background, which can be a roll of seamless background paper. And of course you'll also need some colored gels. Your camera settings are going to depend on your particular setup, but here are the ones I'm using. I'm using manual mode to maintain full control over aperture and ISO settings, and I'm shooting in RAW so that I'll have plenty of room to make adjustments to my exposures in post. Since I'm using flash, I've set my white balance to flash. I've got an aperture of f8, an ISO of 200, and my camera's flash sync speed is 1/250th of a second, so that's what I'll be using as my shutter speed. In order to get a good splash of color to show up on your background, you're going to need to make sure you don't get any white light from the main light source to spill over onto the background. If this happens, it's going to contaminate the color and weaken it or wash it out. The best way to prevent this from happening is to make sure your backdrop is far enough from your main light so that there's enough of a light drop-off to allow the background to go dark. It also helps to use a softbox or some way to narrow the light beam, like possibly a grid or a snoot. You can also block any spillover with a flag if necessary. So let's start by setting up the main light for the subject. I'm using a softbox made for a small flash unit. Here are my settings. A test shot tells me the background will go dark, meaning there isn't going to be any contamination on the background from the main light. Now it's time to select a gel and to secure it to the flash. For this demonstration, I'm just using clear tape to keep the gel in place. Next, I'll place a flash on a light stand to the side of where the subject's going to be, and about 5 feet from the backdrop. I'll start by setting it to full power and taking a test shot to see what I get. I'll also try 1/2 power and 1/4 power, and decide on the intensity of coloring I want and stick with that for my actual shots with the subject. On my first shot with the subject in place, you can see that light from the gelled flash is spilling onto her. So I place a flag between the light and the subject in order to block it from hitting her face. Using colored gels to add a splash of color to your backgrounds is easy. Just remember to keep other lighting from reaching the background so the gelled lights don't have to compete with them. Also, experiment by varying the position of your gelled flash for different effects and change the colors according to your needs.